Hello Internet, my name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I want to talk to you about Kingdom Hearts Recoded. Apologies in advance if I sound a little bit different than normal. I'm not in my normal recording location, so I have to use a different mic. Also, if you notice that the videos are overall maybe a little bit shorter and more coherent, that's because I finally have someone editing my videos. My girlfriend volunteered to do it, and she's doing a really great job, I think. I'd still like to hire a professional editor at some point just because it's an amount of work that I don't think anyone should be doing for free. And I'm especially uncomfortable with having that amount of work be done by my partner, but she volunteered, so I can't really protest that much. Anyway, if you like the editing or have any comments about the overall production of the videos, and leave them in the comments down below. And with that bit of housekeeping out of the way, let's talk about Kingdom Hearts Recoded. Now, Recoded is one of the weirder entries in this weird franchise for a couple of reasons. One, it's a DS remake of a phone game, and not even like an iPhone app game, but just a phone game. Two, it has basically no plot relevance, but the plot was the only part of the game that got ported to the collection. So, awesome. I mean, technically there is some relevance to the plot. It's basically supposed to show the stuff that happens in fake worlds in the universe of Kingdom Hearts is real, the same as the stuff that happens in real worlds. And basically just to say the impact of people who are in a digital world, like Roxas is at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2, is genuine and it affects their heart and blah blah blah. But like, we kind of knew that from playing Kingdom Hearts 2, and also this whole story is nonsense and has nothing to do with anything beyond that one point. But here's the crazy part. Even though it comes from a phone game, which probably wasn't very mechanically deep, I don't know, there's no way to play it anymore, and it has basically nothing going on in the story department, it's one of the better games in the franchise, at least from a mechanical standpoint. See, Recoded introduces two very important and unique mechanics that are kind of meant to build off of the groundwork from games like 358 Half Days. You know, we talked about the inventory system last time and how you manage levels, not just from gaining experience, but also from putting more level chips in your thing. Well, they decide to kind of expand on this idea, and instead of having this little block of inventory that you have to play Tetris with and fit all the shapes in and max out your multipliers, they just have this huge game board, and you have to build out the board and the connections between important spots on the board with chips. And the chips represent your stats, your levels, your abilities, basically everything you can do is represented by a chip. You know, you get a scan chip, you get a level chip, you get all that stuff. And it builds this really cool, intricate circuit. And you like basically choose what path you build to connect between the different important spots on the circuit. And by doing this, you allow power to travel from one spot to another, thus activating them. And the important spots can do all kinds of things. Some of them literally allow you to alter the difficulty and add cheats, basically. Some of them just give you new abilities, like unlocking an additional slot for your combos, which I'll get to in a minute, and all kinds of stuff like that. And the cool part about the board is that it's not just a straight line, right? You get to pick and choose which path you go down to build your circuit and do different things. And not only that, but as you go through it, you realize, or you unlock, more starting points for your paths. So you don't have to just follow off from where you were before, you can start a new branch. So instead of just getting levels and then having new stuff and then equipping all of it, you unlock spells and levels and stats and dodge rolls and all that kind of stuff and slowly put them in and build out your abilities in this unique way that can sometimes allow you to access cool stuff. And like I said, there's a panel where you can change the difficulty. The higher you set the difficulty, the more rewards you get when you complete a mission thing. And there's an area where you can set up cheats. And you can make the game easier with the cheats, or you can make it harder so you get more experience. It's really flexible and cool, and like the fact that you can build into those things and then play with them, or you can just ignore them and keep everything at default and build out, that's really awesome. It's a really cool, intricate system that you might compare to skill trees in other games, except that all of the nodes on the tree are modular, except for like very specific ones. And that's really cool. And the second really cool mechanical system of this game is the command deck. Now, on its own, the command deck wouldn't be that crazy cool. It's basically just like the deck of cards from Chain of Memories, where you have to cycle through and use whatever one you're currently selecting, which could be seen as a bit of a downgrade from the previous method of gameplay where you can choose to activate a spell by hotkey. But there are two things supporting this system that make it way cooler than that. First is that you can equip things besides spells to your command deck. So you can equip spells or special attacks. You can do a strike raid where you throw your keyblade and it pinwheels around and then comes back to you. Or a dive where you do this big overhead attack. Or a dash where you dash through enemies or whatever. And the second thing is that you can combine different commands to make them stronger. And you can level them up by using them and defeating enemies while they're in your command deck. So, if you want to, say, take your Thunder spell and combine it with your downward dive attack to create a Thunder dive, you can do that. And it's really potent. But here's the really cool thing. Not only can you combine commands and level them up, you can test out combinations without committing to them. See, the way you combine commands is by putting them in these brackets, right? You put two in, and then it creates a new command, and you can use that new command. But the thing is, if the two commands you've combined aren't of a high enough level to combine yet, you can still use the new command, and then you can dismantle it if you need to, before you level up all the way. This means that instead of mashing the attack button and occasionally casting a spell from your quick action menu, you can mash the attack button and then occasionally use a really cool special attack from your command deck. And because they have more unique animations, and because you can combine them and control what kind of animation you want, you get this really modular and fun gameplay experience where you have a complete ability to influence your playstyle. Once you use up a command from your command deck, it goes on cooldown, and you have to wait until it becomes available again and cycle through the list. So not only do you have to think about which kind of commands you want to make, but also which order you want to put them in. And whether you're doing special physical attacks, or special combos with magic and physical attacks, or just spells, or just heals, they all go in the command deck, and you can cycle through them kind of like you would with your deck of cards in Chain of Memories. This command system was brought back for Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep. Actually, it might be the case that the modularness of the levels was added in Birth by Sleep, now that I'm thinking about it. I remember feeling that the two systems were slightly different, but now I can't remember what that slight difference was. Anyway, that's not important. So, you might be wondering, how do you get commands and chips, and what do you use them for? And the answer to both of those things is, you complete missions inside of the worlds. Well, kind of. You go into this alternate blank space made out of basically Tron grids and kill boxes and Heartless that look like they're made out of glitched code, which is fine. Personally, I think the Heartless look a little bit lacking in detail since they're made out of this glitchy, blocky code, and I might have preferred to see them the normal way. Whatever. There's a couple of different kinds of objectives you can have in these missions. Some of them require you to kill a certain number of enemies, or to get a certain number of points, or various things like that. There are some timed trials, and some where you have to not touch certain obstacles and all kinds of stuff. So basically, you run around each overworld section, And all the levels are recycled from Kingdom Hearts 1 because plot. And then eventually, as you run around, you'll break a bunch of boxes and run into this glitched section. Once you activate it, a hole in the world opens up and you can enter the data space through that hole. You complete the mission, you get any extra rewards that are hidden in the level, and then when you come out, you have a bunch of points from completing the mission that you can use to buy rewards for that mission. And you can repeat missions to get rewards that you weren't able to afford before. The most valuable rewards are obviously the chips that go onto your chipboard, but you can't really neglect buying commands for your command deck either, because if you're constantly combining them into newer, more powerful commands, you'll run out. Because it takes 2 weaker ones to make 1 stronger one, right? Then, when you've completed all of the mandatory glitched sections for each level, you can enter the boss fight. And instead of the boss fights being a traditional same thing as you were doing the rest of the game, they become weird mini-games that kind of don't make any sense. Some of them are side-scrollers, some of them are hell shooters, fucking bullet hell, that's the name of that genre. Some of them involve platforming or puzzle solving, or they're just a bunch of weird, disconnected mini-games that have nothing to do with the rest of the game. A lot of the time you can't use your commands in them, and it's a whole weird mess. I don't know why it was done this way. It's weird. There are also usually multiple stages. The first time you fight a boss, you have to run through this side-scroller level for 3 whole levels. And it's, why? Why you do this? Nomura, what are you smoking? Can I get some of it? That's just a joke, by the way. I don't do drugs, especially not during the game design process, but god damn, I feel like Nomura has to. He's just one of those designers where every single game he does just makes you more and more certain that he's an alien who doesn't understand what games or human thinking is. Kinda like Kojima. But despite the nonsensicalness of the story and the insanity of these weird boss fight minigame things, I absolutely love going back and playing Recoded. Mechanically, it's probably the deepest and most intricate of the games in the franchise, and it's really fun to dig into that and try to optimize it and just play with it, like an RPG. Kingdom Hearts is an action RPG series, and while I don't mind that, I do often feel like the action is, 1, more flair than substance, and 2, takes a huge front seat compared to the RPG elements and the careful, strategic planning, thinking stuff that I really like about RPGs. But since this is a game that has a handful of really solid, fun mechanics and no plot, it's the exact opposite. And I get to wallow around in the mechanics as much as I want. And it's great. I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that the inventory-based system of 358 half-days is really good, but not as complex as what you get with the chipboard and the command deck in Recoded. And while the command deck was carried over into Birth by Sleep, they got rid of the chipboard, did some other things I'll talk about when I actually talk about that game. And while it is a better game overall, because it has an actual story and better level design and new levels and stuff like that, I oftentimes don't want to go back and play it as much because I don't get to dig around in the mechanics as much as I like. But I can also see that if you're a more casual player or fan, or if you don't really care about digging into the mechanics, or if you're much more interested in the story of these games because they tend to have great stories, Recoded might not be a good game for you. You might not enjoy it at all. For me, it's a game that perfectly hits that sweet spot of strategy and action and building out your character stats, but it's still a pretty clunky game in a lot of ways, and there's not really a great story, and, the enemies are all just weird glitchy things in a weird glitchy computer grid world that isn't super interesting to look at most of the time, and I could see why people don't like it as much. So I'm really curious to hear, in the comments down below, do you like Recoded or do you hate it? Have you even ever played the game? And, if you haven't played it, unfortunately it's only available on Nintendo DS, which is a dead platform and has been for years. But you can emulate DS games pretty easily. There's a few good ones I like. And I guess if you can get your hands on a 3DS, you can play it backwards compatible like that way. It's really a shame that the DS games weren't ported forward with the rest of the franchise. Maybe there were some licensing issues with Nintendo, or maybe there were just, too many difficulties with the split screen thing. Realistically, I think the split screen thing isn't a huge deal. Even in Recoded, it's not used for much. You could just turn it into a pause screen. But, oh well. These games also don't really have any touch-based commands. I mean, like, you can use the touch screen to interact with the menu, or you can just use your D-pad like a normal game. So, there's really nothing holding it back from a port unless there's some licensing issues with Nintendo. But none of the DS titles or the 3DS title made it over into the collection on PS4, and that sucks. So, yeah. Anyway, if you can find a way to play it, then play it. It's worth your time, and I enjoyed it. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next life. Laters. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you have any things to say about it, leave those in the comment section. If you like the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, tell your friends, start a cult, sacrifice your firstborn and paint their skull golden. I don't know, not that last bit. No human sacrifices. I'm legally liable. No, none of that shit. But, I got Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I stream on Mondays. I also have a Patreon, but the obvious caveat with Patreon is you never donate to anyone unless you have money to burn, and if you have money to burn, then why not donate to a charity instead? I've got a few linked in my description at all times. I'm not affiliated with any of them, obviously, but yeah, I just thought they were cool, so, thanks for watching.